Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. My name is Taitu Heron. I'm head of the Women and Development Unit of the University of the West Indies Open Campus. And this evening, you're joining us for a second in our series, a cross-country dialogue with youth. And this evening, we will be having our cross-country dialogue with MP Lisa Hanna from Jamaica. And we'll be talking about challenges in leadership in general, but also challenges in leadership as a woman. And this we're doing in commemoration of the International Women's Day, which was actually yesterday, but for the entire month of March, we also do quite a bit of activities related to that. And also because March is Women's History Month. And the theme for this year's International Women's Day is Choose to Challenge, hence why we're focusing on challenges in political leadership with an emphasis on how women participate and how they engage and the kinds of challenges that they encounter. As we know, globally across the world, women's participation in political leadership is unequal in comparison to men, and also at the level of at the level of party machineries. And greater participation is somewhat impeded by patriarchal state structures and the party machineries whose economy still discounts care work to the margins, and therefore this slows the pace, the entry, the participation, and the promotion of women into political life. Now, studies have shown, there's one in particular by UN Women that had looked at the perception of women serving in politics. And societal perception of women in politics in the region is actually quite progressive. So most persons think that women are quite capable of serving in the political arena. However, this is not accompanied by accompanied of reducing the role that women have as mothers and caregivers in the private domain. And we also have stereotypes that prevail across the Caribbean, which hold women to higher standards and scrutiny as leaders. So in a sense, it gives the impression that men are somehow more divinely mandated to serve in public life. What we have also seen is that throughout the Caribbean, we've had incremental increases in the number of women in political leadership. In Trinidad, we have 11 women serving in parliament, coming from 5. In Jamaica, where we had elections just the other day, we see 19 women in parliament, increasing from 12. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have 3 women who serve in parliament and 6 serving here in Barbados, including the Prime Minister. So I want to introduce that, but also to take the time to introduce the theme and our partner, Pink Parliament, which has been one of WAN's partners for the last 2 years, and we've been waving wands and making magic for the last 2 years. And the Pink Parliament Initiative is essentially a 6-month program which purposefully seeks to disrupt the narrative rather wishes to see women enter politics and not for them to see it as just a domain for mostly men. So to kind of increase their political ambition, so to speak, and to increase over time, hopefully, their participation in politics by encouraging adolescent girls to see a career path in politics as possible and attainable. The Pink Parliament focuses on self-empowerment, learning how to debate, do public speaking. It focuses on harnessing the voice, gives them tools to navigate conflict, and they also get quite a range of information on various aspects that relate to gender and development. And most importantly, or one of the benchmarks of the program is for them to gain access to a network of dynamic women whose careers are in political leadership. So that also, of course, is one of the reasons why we have this evening MP Lisa Hanna with us. And we are joined in terms of our moderation by former Khadija Bakaria, who is one of the first entrants in the Pink Parliament Initiative. And she's a young Muslim woman born and raised in Barbados, and she has very strong interest in politics and volunteerism and writing. And she currently serves on the Pink Parliament team as the Alumni Relations Officer. She's also a volunteer with the Barbados Association of Muslim Ladies, and she's also a part of the U Report Steering Committee. She's a student at Springer Memorial, where she studies law, sociology, and literatures in English. So what I'm going to do right now is hand over to Khadija. Khadija, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I'll be reading the bio for Miss MP Lisa Hanna. MP Lisa Hanna began a career in media at a young age of 14, co-hosting the TV talk show Rapping, and continued a focus on youth leadership. She was appointed a United Nations Development Program Goodwill Ambassador, one of the youngest in history, leveraging her voice to address issues of global concern. Her engagement with the public through the media has been consistent and continuous to evolve. A karate black belt and instructor, she holds bachelor's and master's degree in communications from University of the West Indies. Lisa is a director of the Lidford Logistics Group, an agriculture and food processing facility operating as a special economic zone, providing services in third-party logistics, farming, and agricultural coordination, juice manufacturing, cannabis processing for pharmacy use, and a state-of-the-art baking facility serving the island's hotel, tourism, and food service infrastructure. More specifically, MP Hanna is a 4-term member of Parliament, opposition spokesperson, foreign affairs and foreign trade, former cabinet minister. You're very talented. I will now invite you to speak on, let us get to know you a bit better before we ask you some questions. You're muted in case.
There you go. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. It's really great to be here and to see my good friend Taitu again, and to meet with all of you here in the Pink Parliament. I think it's an extremely important initiative, and I think it's a great initiative because certainly women like yourself who are so talented and charismatic and enthusiastic about helping our countries, various countries across the region, need to get your feet wet in an understanding and get some mentorship in really what this industry is all about. And I call it an industry because it has so many facets to it. So let me start off by saying this. Going into politics is something noble to do. Over the years, because of the patriarchy and because of how men have controlled the leadership positions in the political landscape, not only in the region, but across the world, it is conducted in a particular way that perhaps women have stayed away from. In other words, when you look at the data, what it demonstrates across the world is that not many women have risen to the ranks of leading their countries or leading their parties. Fortunately, in our region, we've had extremely brave and courageous, smart women like Portia Simpson Miller, like in Trinidad and Barbados, current Prime Minister, your Prime Minister, who I love dearly, Mia Mottley, and going back, and we have heads in Aruba now who are female. But what I want to say is that it's still skewed to one way. So even though the women are our workers in our party, and I'm speaking directly for my political party, the majority of our workers are at the indoor agent level, work for you in elections, they're the volunteers, they're the community activists, and when you need something done, it is the women. But there is a reluctancy on 2 levels to step forward. One, because many women see it as very, very time consuming. 2, it tends to be played out in the media as a blood sport, and the backbiting of how the cut and thrust of politics is. Many persons see how the parliament conducts itself, and it just seems an aggressive type of industry to go into when you want to live a life that is less confrontational. And then the second issue is the financing of it, because it takes resources to campaign to run an election. And in many instances, politicians are not paid. Members of parliament are not paid well, commensurate to what your qualifications are and what you could earn in the private sector. And that income is spent largely helping people in your constituencies, especially if you are in opposition. So I have found that what has been happening though, and this COVID reality has really put in stark contrast, I would say, how female leaders have managed COVID. And if you've looked across the world to the countries that have really managed the virus and managed their populations, both at a humanitarian, at a nurturing level, at making sure that there is balance, some would argue, and I've seen this, that it is the female-led countries, Denmark, Barbados, Germany, New Zealand, Finland, Taiwan. And when you look at how it matches up with, for example, the United States and even Britain, you have to say, yo, the woman, them are run things. And I can appreciate that. I mean, here in Jamaica, we are very pleased to have a female Speaker of the House, very pleased to have a deputy female Speaker of the House. In the Senate, there is, for government business, there's a woman who leads the government Senate business in the House. The deputy leader of government business in the lower house is a woman, Minister Babsy Grange. And you also had at the time, before our leadership change in the PNP recently, you had Donna Scott Motley, who was the opposition leader of opposition business in the Senate. Now she's a deputy leader because, you know, things, and when leaders come in, they want their own team. But I would have to say that I'm seeing a real reformation of how women see themselves stepping forward. And it can only redound to our best interest because women lead differently. They bring a different perspective to the management of people's affairs. We are nurturers by nature. But what is necessary is that there needs to be a real legislative framework to encourage more women to get in, to make sure that just in the same way we want gender equity in how women are paid, how we see them on boards of a country, we need them also in the parliament. And not to just have tokenism when it comes to women, not to say, well, you know, we just need more women, but put the things in place. I'll give you a simple example. I wouldn't be able to take my newborn baby to parliament. There's no nursing room. There is no place that if I had a young baby, I would feel comfortable that there was like a creche at the parliament or where I could breastfeed, you know, in privacy. It's not conformed to make sure that women can be the leaders, be strong, run a family, take care of your constituency. It's not designed for that. And I think the generation of leaders like yourself who are coming forward now, those things might sound really trivial, but what it is, they're real and dynamic. In the same way that you have situations in primary healthcare where coming out of COVID, you now see that, okay, the women are the nurturers, but they're the ones having the diabetes, the breast cancer. And we have to really have some kind of affirmative action to put forward and choosing to challenge how we deal with the inequitable status quo. So when we talk about choosing to challenge, there are things that I am choosing to challenge. In my own constituency, there's no program that we do that's not equitable in terms of gender. So if farmers are getting products, we identify female farmers, and there has to be a balance. If there are water projects going on for water tanks, it's the same thing. But also I'm a big believer in pushing now for making sure that Jamaica diversifies its economic base, because we need to have and grow our economy. Because if we don't, the women will continue to suffer economically at the community level. And we know what happens when women are not financially independent. They're subject to abuse, they're subject to health issues, they're subject to just a cycle of poverty. So my experience in the political realm, having now been in representational politics for about 14 years at the elected, and I've seen the electorate change, and I've held various positions. I've been an officer of my party. I was chairman of my region for 8 years. So I organize on the ground. I'm a tough warrior in elections. And I don't only operate at the parliamentary level, but it's not easy, it's tough. So anybody that thinks that it's a glamorous parliamentary position, it's not. You have to be able to strategically maneuver the trenches of the politics. And you have to be able to make those relationships, have those relationships, and always know that your base is the most important thing in your constituency. That's what anchors you. So you have to be able to organize and you're doing the right thing, organize at the community level, keep that base connected. And also, the truth is, plan your entry into politics and plan your exit from politics. Nobody at this stage wants anybody to die in a seat. And you should always give the opportunity for young women like yourself to get a chance to serve. So where my thinking is too is, okay, I am now in a position where I can mentor, I can teach, and I am looking for persons within my constituency to say, hey, you need to start preparing yourself to run for councillor, and you also need to see yourself as the next member of parliament, because it's a renewal situation that has to take place so that your electorate, not the millennials anymore, but the Generation Zs and the Generation Alphas that are coming, that can see themselves in the leadership and aspire to be their member of parliament as well. So what I would say to those of you aspiring to go into politics is find somebody that you can ask questions, challenge the status quo, disrupt it, speak out, right? The world is so different now. Make sure that you make people feel uncomfortable with your amplification. There is also, when you see it in the politics, there is what I would term ingrained masochistic misogyny. They will not make space for you unless you push yourself in there. And run for the positions. Don't be afraid of it. Step forward. Don't wait for anybody to say, well, it's not your turn. And I've heard that a lot in politics. It's not your turn. You're young. And it's also I also get that from the women. So you have to be very, very clear about what your vision is, what your purpose is. And the challenge that I have always chosen is, at the end of the day, to make sure that the people come first. So, please go into politics. I would encourage every one of you to do it. So with those few words, I will turn over to questions, because I think the dialogue is more important than the monologue.
Well, I think you just answered all of my questions. But what really has me questioning is that you started out as a talk show host, and you started out as an actor, you started out as different things. So what really inspired you to get involved in politics? What really was this, okay, yes, I'm going to get involved in politics, I'm going to be a politician?
Well, I always wanted to be a politician. So a lot of the things that I was doing in my life, even the advocacy, my value proposition about who I wanted to be was to advocate on behalf of people. So the working in the media, even from high school, was an opportunity to learn and to go across Jamaica. And even when I was doing different things at the university level, I was doing project management, I was working at the university, I had different stints in my life, but I always knew that this was where I wanted to be. And then I was helping back in 2006. I was helping the Most Honorable Portia Simpson Miller, with her leadership campaign, because I thought she was just electric and fascinating. And I wanted her to become Prime Minister. And when she won, I was helping some PNP MPs at the time. And when she won, there was some issues in my seat, Southeast St. Anne, and she said, I think this young woman would make a good member of parliament. And she called her. I would have gone into politics, but I was 32. I would be 46 this year. And I was thinking that I wanted to make some more money. And I said, you know what? I don't think there are any accidents. And that is when I decided, let me just do this part of it. And I have no regrets. It's been a challenge on many, many levels. And there has been many serious political battles that I have had to withstand and contend with. And certainly I've prevailed. But no, you mellow in your political maturity, and you're able to see things coming from afar, and you can diffuse them. You can step aside. You can negotiate. You can say, look, this is not necessary. It's not in the best interest of anybody to be doing it. So from that perspective, that is how I got into it.
And you mentioned that the challenge that, there were a lot of challenges throughout your being a politician, and it was very, as you said, it was very hard or difficult to experience them. How did this shape you? How did it, did it help you for the better? Did it help for the worse? Were there times that you were at your low points where you wanted to give up?
There was one point, I think, only once, when I felt like the wind was knocked completely out of me. And that was once when there was a demonstration in my constituency, which was an arranged demonstration at the time, and a little girl died from that demonstration. And it was a demonstration put together by a particular faction, which I just thought was just, and I still think about it today, and it was unnecessary. But there has been, at every juncture, a baptism of fire. I don't think I've experienced anything in life, whether politically or otherwise, where I have not had a fiery baptism at every level. So what it has done is it makes you steely, it makes you more compassionate, if you can understand it, because you're able to see people and what their propensities are. And many, many times it really comes from their own misunderstanding that the best way to deal with a circumstance is confrontation. Leadership challenges and things like that are not battles. Those are just par for the course. It's when you have this stealthy stratagem that is coming to stab you in your back, and you have to be able to have a 360-degree angle, because ultimately, even internally, it's about who wants power. So I think what those things have done is I can look back at my political career and say, man, when I look back and I can speak about it and say, I've really lived an exciting life.
Thank you for that. I think I'll now open to those watching and those on the live stream for any questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand. I see, forgive me if I pronounce your name wrong, Lisa. Please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Thank you. Yes, Lisa Jawahir. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Miss Lisa Hannah. I am in admiration of a lot that you've done, and I only discovered your work must have been about a year and a half ago. I also have a television show. My master's is in strategic communication, so it was very inspiring to see somebody who has well, the journey that I'm going through right now that you have gone. I'm really interested because for me, I entered the political race in St. Lucia. I was a prospective candidate last year. I was not successful. A man old enough to be my dad got in, and I have no issue with persons with experience. I just need to see more succession planning around the region. But in my case, I've been appointed as a senator, so I've been in the opposition seat. Thank you. I've been in the opposition seat for about 7 months. Um, but what really keeps you going? You have been doing this for 4 terms, and every single day I wake up, and there are some days I feel like yes, I want to serve the people, but is this the way that I need to do it? Because it is so frustrating. Women are also your biggest critics, not in the positive way. And a great point was mentioned earlier that you see across the region, everybody's saying there should be more women inclusion. Everybody's saying that, but do they actually believe it? Because when you actually go to those meetings, when you're actually in those positions, it's those same women who tell you, you need to wait your time and it's not your place. And I have no problem with us being nurturers and caregivers, but I do believe that gives us an advantage, as it relates to emotional intelligence, etc. But how do you keep going? Is there a routine? What is the secret? I would love to know.
There is no, my darling friend Lisa, Senator Lisa. You have to dig very deep on some days. I would be curious to hear about your election campaign, because typically in seats like that, and I don't know the seat that you ran in, but oftentimes what we need to do as women, hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can.
I can hear you.
Okay. Oftentimes what we need to do is really analyze the seat that we're working in. And election campaigns and winning an election really comes down to critical organization. It's about getting that vote in the box. It's about getting your canvas so right and making sure that you have the people to carry out those voters on election day. So the communications aspect of one of it is one side, but you have to make sure that we have a system to get those votes for you in the box. So I'd be curious to hear what your system is, but we can do that at another time, and I'll make sure that Taitu gives me your contacts and we can talk about it a little bit more. What keeps me going are the people, and trust me get enough cuss every day of the week. And also remember that I came to the table as a beauty queen. So, and to this day, I mean, nearly 30 years later, it is, well, she can't have a lot of sense because she was Miss World. So I had those things to contend with as well, and still having some of them to contend with, especially from women. But here's the advice I would give to you. You are in a good place because you are a senator. So you don't have a constituency necessarily, but people look up to you for leadership. You have to cultivate a niche that you want to work with. You can't be all things to all people. So identify what you think is needed in St. Lucia, how you think you can bring some action to it, how you think you can make some noise about it, and how you can use the parliament to change a particular situation, and focus on that. And on the days that you feel like you can't go forward, have at least 3 or 4 people that you can bounce ideas off of, and that will be helpful. But remember, this industry that we're in is not very appreciative. You are there, and you, in many instances, and this is what I want you to understand, you are the conduit, you are the touchstone, you are the punching bag, quote unquote, for people who have tremendous frustrations that need someone to be able to talk to. So it might come out as anger, aggression, selfishness, but what they're going through in their lives, we would never understand it. So sometimes just take a deep breath and listen and have nothing else to say. And when they're finished, say, okay, just work this through, but stick to it, stay in it, push through. We can't afford for you to leave it.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I would like to ask if any of the pink parliamentarian girls that are watching have any questions, and if they do, please turn on your cameras and ask the questions. I will call out some names if I have to.
Out, my girl, call them out.
Anyone? I believe that's Krystal that has a question. Go ahead.
Hi, good night. So it's actually not Krystal,
Oh.
it's Roshana. Sorry. Good night, Lisa. My name is Roshana Trim. I'm one of the co-founders of Think Parliament, and I want to thank you so much for agreeing to participate tonight. Khadija, you're doing a great job. So I really just wanted to ask you, you shared a lot of advice today. What has been, I have two questions. The first one is, what has been perhaps your biggest political battle that you have faced? And Jamaica has had a lot of discussion about anti-abortion legislation over the past few weeks or months or so. And I really want to know your thoughts on the current situation as it relates to women being allowed to use their agency and their autonomy in order to make decisions about their body. I want, if you are okay with sharing that with us tonight.
Sure. So, fun fact, back in maybe 2013, I raised the matter of abortion in Parliament in one of my sectoral debates. And I also sat on the Joint Select Committee in 2009 looking at the abortion legislation. I support a woman's right to choose. I always have, and I've been very vocal about it, to the point where the church were not very kind in some of their utterances. So I support it, and I in that joint parliamentary group, I was very clear on what needed to happen in terms of women taking control of their own bodies and giving the legislation to be able to do it. And what we need to do in Jamaica, you don't need to create any new laws per se, you just need to repeal what is there now. And I think it's time. I also think it's time that we look at other matters relating to human rights of human beings, in terms of LGBTQ in Jamaica as well. So these laws that have been on our books from the time of colonialism, especially some of our abortion law, which was coming directly out of slavery, because if you were supposed to breed up as women, because if you were born of a slave, you were a slave. Those laws have to change, and women are too progressive. I think it is selfish for the most part, for leaders to tell women how they should operate medically with themselves. And if you look at the patriarchy that has existed in our politics, in our legislation, or the legislators who have been there, it perhaps is no surprise why we're still being told why you can't do certain things. So yes, I'm a strong advocate for women having the right to choose. And one of the things that we found in the reports coming forward, especially in Jamaica, is women have the word abortion jars them. They prefer the termination of pregnancy, or the right to choose. So absolutely, I'm very progressive where that is concerned. I've had too many political battles to tell you which one has been my greatest. I would say when I was, and I don't, they're now in the past, but if you Google me and you look at things like OCG, and that was brought by somebody in my own party, because there was a systematic approach to try and remove me as a member of parliament by my own political party at the time, by persons within it. And that was sustained application that went on for about 3 years. So, you know, I've gone through, name it, I've gone through it. But it's, you jump those hurdles and you continue the journey.
Let me take chair privilege and ask you a question, Lisa.
Sure.
Before I hand over back to Ronelle. Sorry, not Ronelle, to Khadija. I want to continue from the co-founder's question, Roshana's question, and in terms of talking about various political battles in certain parts of the last year, when the political campaign, the campaign for party leadership of the People's National Party, in certain circles, you were the favorite to lead the PNP, but it didn't turn out that way. Are you willing to share any aspects of it and how you know, the campaign itself and how you felt afterwards, and what were some of the challenges that you came up with that perhaps hindered you taking that role?
Well, I decided to run for leadership of the PNP because I thought the PNP needed to have energy, needed to have some motivation of the base, needed to be able to motivate the youth population as well as keep our base. So it wasn't, especially coming out of back-to-back elections, because I had just come out, helped Peter in his leadership campaign. Then we went into a grueling general election after COVID. And then with my own seat, 2 recounts. And so it was something that I wasn't doing for the title of necessarily because I wanted the title of president, but because of what I had seen over the years and what I had seen our electorate becoming and what I thought was necessary to motivate that electorate and to really have some electricity in the politics. It was an eye-opening experience. I had been in 3 leadership races before, both for Portia Simpson Miller. Well, she ran 3 times. The 3rd time really doesn't count, but her first campaign and second campaign really in 2006. Her other one when she was challenged by Peter Phillips, and the 3rd one doesn't count, and then Peter Phillips's campaign. So I know what leadership campaigns, internal campaigns can do to a movement. I will write them in the annals of my memoirs. But I think no, the PNP has to coalesce. It has to learn from what has happened. It has to go forward. There are only 14 of us in the parliament, which is difficult when you have a government that has so many seats. And it requires tremendous teamwork to work together and to make sure you get your voices heard. But I have no regrets. Running for president of the party was one of the best experiences of my life. I learned a lot about my own political movement. I always knew about the delegates, you know, and I learned now what is important to transform the party in this century. And it needs, this is bigger than Lisa Hanna, it's bigger than Mark Golding. It really is about how to make a country not only survive, but prevail. There are real systemic issues that are facing our people. And in a world of digitization, when you can have artificial intelligence having 97% accuracy in diagnosing certain kinds of lung cancer, but as a country, we are still unable to have universal Wi-Fi for children across the country, tells us and tells me that the tribal way that we've been doing politics, certainly in Jamaica, has to have some kind of respite. There has to be active cooperation now between government, between opposition, to really get the kind of structures in place so that our people are not impeded for their development. In other words, water problems still in rural areas, and then the Water Commission is going to say, well, our balance sheet can't really provide water. Education issues, we're behind. Health, we're behind. And especially coming out of COVID. And to diversify our economy so that we don't have the kind of trade imbalances that we're facing and have more export industry so we can earn the foreign exchange and put our people in markets. And this requires active solutions. You know, it requires not the constant debate about the politics, but it really requires a level of nationalism. When you had, you know, the activism at that time in CARICOM between Barbados and Trinidad and Guyana and Grenada and Manly up here in Jamaica, what you felt was a region and a real ethos that everybody wanted to make it. And that's where I am. I want us to make it. If there are good government programs in agriculture, I will support it. I'm not going to oppose it just for opposing it because it's a JLP program. And it's the same thing for the JLP. They need to look at the opposition and say, well, you know, that plan is a good plan. Let's sit down and see how we can work it through and really get the people at the center of development. So coming out of that presidential was a cathartic experience for me. I was bludgeoned by so many things out there, but I took a decision in that campaign not to speak negatively about my party, and I still maintain that, and I support, I'm a team player, and I'm doing the work, and Mark Goling is the leader, and I support the president of the party. And the PMP is a titan, and when titans fall, it resonates. It's like when a giant drops, you hear it. But you know, politics is cyclical, so we will definitely come back to the sphere.
Thank you so much for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have a question from one of the live streams, and then we will go to the question in the Zoom. An 11-year-old by the name of Nikayla Kelly. She said that she's just 11 years old and she wants to help poor people. My question to you is, has there been any time you felt like giving up because of the criticism of the public?
No. And criticism is good, but you have to be able to know how to use it. And social media criticism, you have to understand those nuances. So if you're able to take a step back from yourself and say, well, you know, let me look at what people are saying in this particular area. Are they right? Maybe they're not saying it correctly, but maybe it's a pattern that you have that's jarring people the wrong way. So it's not getting your message across. And maybe you need to tweak that. And like in any relationship that you're in, if your partner is saying, boy, Lisa, I never like how you did say that, or I didn't like how you did that, you have a relationship with the people that you serve. And so if they're saying to you, boy, MP, you need to pull up your socks and do that, you have to listen. It's a criticism, yes, but in the long run, if your desire and your purpose is to help people, then yes. Criticism is hard, and you don't learn to override it at 11 years old. And it takes a degree of bucking your toe, crying, feeling depressed, wondering why. And those are natural human instincts. I'm not going to tell you that, you know, I'm a tough cookie. So I will just say, yo, right over it. Just let that go and make a God forward. But not everybody handles grief and loss and criticism the same way. So for those persons that don't know how to handle it, I would say find somebody who can walk you through it. So in other words, don't look, if somebody says, boy, I don't like you. Okay, you don't like me. Why don't you like me? No, I just not like you. But you can't tell me why. Is it something that I've done? Is it? And you might get to the bottom of it. And I'll give you an example. Recently on Twitter, somebody just came out of nowhere and said, I just had something really nasty to say. So I decided to inbox the person. And I said, look, tell me what is wrong, because this came from nowhere. And interestingly, I got, you're my favorite person. I've been watching you since 1993. He could tell me my entire history. And what I realized is that they just wanted some acknowledgement, that he even took pictures with me apparently and has them up, and I didn't even know this. So sometimes people lash out because they're just seeking some attention. So you have to be able to deal with that as well. And as I said to you earlier, where I am is you recognize that confrontation is probably not the best way. Sometimes just reaching out and saying, look, let's sit down and talk this through. But if you don't want that and you continue, then there's no other option, and you don't want to meet me in a fight.
Thank you for that. Question from the Zoom for Rosa.
Good evening, Ms. Hannah and fellow participants.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm a Muslim female, and one of the challenges that we face is the high level of stereotyping that we receive, which is pretty much like what you indicated as far as beauty queens are concerned, because as beauty queens are also stereotyped. We are also a minority in Caribbean countries. What advice would you give to young aspiring Muslim women who are thinking of entering politics and public life, taking into consideration the many challenges that women face in the field already? And the other question is, how important is the support of the males around you when you are in public life? How has that played out in your life?
Okay. I would like to see a more universal approach to religious acceptance in the leadership of the Caribbean. And so I would encourage more Muslim women, more Jewish women, more Christian women, Hindu women, Buddhists, because I think it is important for acceptance, for shared understanding, and for an acknowledgement that there are different approaches in it. Jamaica is largely a Christian society, but I have Muslim friends all over the world. Some of my closest friends are Muslims, and we have more in common than you think, or than they think, and the people think. So I would say that your religion is not a hindrance, or should never be perceived as a hindrance to what you want to do and how you want to serve. And I think it is important for that dialogue to take place, and it breaks down stereotypes, and there certainly has to be more acceptance in everything that we do. As it relates to the males, men, as a matter of fact, in the politics, sometimes share the same insecurities, the same issues that women face, but they just network better. Women don't network as well. You have to have a strong support system in your family, though, because when you want to have somebody or somebody close to talk to that you can trust, your family may be that person. I found that in my own political movement, I've had some good mentors who have been able to guide me, who are elders and male, and that have their advice has been invaluable. And I've had women who have given me invaluable advice. Some of them have not been leaders or members of parliament, but but they were in the kitchen cabinets of leaders. They sat on boards. Some of my really good friends are also representatives. Natalie Nito, who was also my campaign manager in the presidential. And you know, if we're going to war, and if she's going to war, she looked beside me, I'm there. And if I'm going to war, she's going to be with me. And that is how we have to see ourselves. I sometimes find it very interesting when a woman will say, well, you know, I'm not because she's a woman means that I need to vote for her, or not because she's she's not ready. And I don't understand how that narrative can come out of another woman's mouth without having done the research or recognizing that you might be in a profession as well, whereby you're facing some of the same obstacles. You're just as qualified, you've done the work, but somebody is telling you it's not your turn. And because of that persistent misogyny, you've become contrite in deference to it. So even your own narrative unwittingly and subconsciously starts to sound that way. And unless other women are out there saying, hang on a minute, you don't hear yourself, right? How could you be saying that? It's almost blasphemous to your gender to be able to put yourself out there that you are not ready, and look how long you've been doing this thing. You're more experienced, you're more qualified. Put yourself forward, girl. So religion shouldn't hinder. And I tell people all the time, yes, you're smart enough. Yes, you're special. Yes, don't wait. The time is now. You might die tomorrow. So make sure that when your epitaph is written, they can say you chose to challenge at all levels.
We have another question from the live stream, and please, for those on Zoom, don't forget to raise your hand so I can acknowledge you, because I don't want to miss any of the questions. This individual asks, how do you ensure you are heard when it comes to key issues in your profession or workspace, especially when you are with other talented and educated individuals?
Well, you have to make sure that your arguments are succinct and not backed up by emotion, but backed up by data, and that you can lead that to show that what you're saying makes absolute sense, and that you present it not only within a local context, but within a global context to show how by doing this in this particular area, it makes sense not only on an individual level, but on a national level, or that it adds value. Anything that you're doing, make sure that it adds value to the whole. If it's not going to add value, then, and if it doesn't have the data, then typically people just shoot it down.
Thank you for that. We have 2 comments. One individual said, honestly, I'm learning from you and I look up to you and I want to be like you or even better, which is the biggest regret you have. Pardon?
Let them be better. I want you to be better.
Hopefully. And then she also asks, what is your biggest regret you have in your political career? That's a deep question.
That's a deep question. I've dealt with those regrets. But I don't, because I don't think there are any accidents, but perhaps the way that I handled one particular situation, but one day I will talk about it, not right now. But yes, and I want you all to go out there and conquer your countries and make them better. You know, it's your time. It's what you need to do. And you all need to go in there together. You all need to move in there like a huge wave and not worry about whether or not you can do it. And go in as a group. Get all of you to go in. And let me tell you something, money is not what wins elections. It's people, it's the touch. Go and talk to the people, stay with the people, stay on the ground, walk with them, talk with them. You might not have anything to give them, but they just want to see you and they want to hear from you.
I think everything is a learning process. Even if it's a bad decision, you know, you still learn from it and you learn to better it in the future. So another comment we have is, when women learn that we are as capable as men and even more worthy in more aspects, they will be more supportive of each other. Women should be more supportive of each other. I agree.
True, very true. So as I'm speaking to you, I'm running a dinner party at the same time at my house. So I have people beckoning to me as to what to do, and I'm saying, yes, I'm coming, don't worry. So all of those things, and my husband is over there, and I have friends in this corner, and they're like, what's going on? You know, I'm telling them the table is set, I'm telling them where the napkins are and where the plates are, and so all of that is happening at the same time.
You're multitasking.
Yes. So if you see me look away, it's because of that.
Well, that's what your role is as a parent and as a hostess and as a politician, right? We have a question here from Kathleen. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. Please unmute your mic when you're ready.
Thank you so much, Khadija. Good evening, Ms. Hannah. It's such a pleasure to have you on this platform. You've been truly a huge inspiration to me, especially your involvement in the ag sector. My name is Krystal Yearwood. I am from St. Lucia, like the other Lisa here. And I just left the UN to focus full-time on my nonprofit organization in St. Lucia, which is called Helen's Daughters, and it focuses on the economic empowerment of rural women. I do want to enter the political arena, maybe a decade from now. Yeah, I'm in my 30s, so I'm still feeling it out. But I do know that leaving the CSO sphere into politics is almost like walking a plank. I'm not necessarily sure what party I may be a part of, if I may be an independent candidate and so on, but I've always noticed that you have a strong connection with the people. What advice can you give for this possible transition?
Are you a part of a political movement, or is there one that you are aspiring to join?
No, I'm not at all currently.
Well, if you are more grassroots, is what I'm picking up, and more of self-reliance and teaching people, you sound more progressive in your outlook of how you want to help your country. So you need to look, first of all, at the political parties, both historically and currently, that would align with your personal value system. You know, how you feel that if it's a top-down approach that only benefits a few, or you believe in a bottom-up approach which helps the masses of the country. And I would say to you, start from there. You're in a nonprofit, so right now I'm assuming you're getting funding through grant aid and raising your own funds. And people typically tend to give persons like yourself those funds because you're not in politics. So you have to be very clear on choosing your battles and what you really want to do. So because once you go into politics, then your nonprofit, non-government organization, you might not get the same funding. But if you really want to go into politics, because you're helping people now, if you want to go into it to change legislation and speak in the parliament to assist the women or the persons that you're helping in another way, then you need to be able to join that movement, identify a seat or somebody that you want to work with, and ultimately start to work to see if that is a seat you could become a member of parliament with, and actively start working with the party and let them know what your intentions are.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And the other thing I would say is don't wait a decade to start that process though. But as I said to you, you have to be able to balance your nonprofit, because also you don't want it to seem as if you are leveraging contacts in politics to try and help your organization and vice versa. But I would start that now, if that's ultimately your goal.
Thank you so much for that question from St. Lucia. A point of order, we're just going to continue for about another 5 to 7 minutes. If there are any questions coming in from the Pink Parliamentarians, now is the time to ask. And I'll hand back over to Khadija as well.
Okay, well, since Pink Parliament girls tend to get I'm not even sure the word, but we'll ask Iman to ask her question because she's wanted to ask the question for a while, and then I'll ask a question and then we'll go on to the next person also. So Iman, go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, good night, everybody, and especially good night to Miss Anna. I've been following your politics for a long time, and I'd say that you really inspire me. The question I wanted to ask is that you would have been working within the political arena for, I think it's 14 plus years. During your years of working, has there been any involvement of Muslim girls, or have you ever seen any involvement of Muslim girls within that arena? And do you think that there is likely to have any involvement or inclusion of, let's say, Muslim girls and girls who are not really girls only, but like females who are from the other gender spectrum of being trans, non-binary, from the LGBTQ community to be exact?
Thank you for that question. Jamaica does not have a large Muslim population. So I haven't seen the involvement of Muslim women or Muslim girls in any of the jurisdictions that I am working in. And certainly I haven't seen a Muslim member of parliament or senator in my lifetime in Jamaica. That doesn't mean it shouldn't happen and it can't happen. And it's not something that I believe can't. In other words, I would like to see it happen. And as I said earlier, and other religions, because it leads to acceptance and it leads to understanding. There has not been any person that I know who has in Jamaica, in leadership or in the parliament, said that they are LGBTQ. Maybe they are, but I guess because of how they feel it would be viewed by the population in terms of trying to get votes, because of perhaps the church and other places, that they would not be prepared to say that publicly. There was one person who was, I believe, running in a campaign in the last election who said that they were. I don't think that or said that they were going to run. I don't remember. The strange thing is, I think there is, it's the older generations in some instances that are landlocked in their listening about LGBTQ. But there are a lot of groups at the cultural level that's doing amazing work with persons who are trans, who see themselves as another, and right here in Jamaica. And do I think that ultimately we could see that? Absolutely, I do. And as somebody who is seeing it happen around the world, you know, one of the quotes that I remember seeing recently was "Love is love." So I think ultimately it can happen, or it could happen in Jamaica, is what I would say.
I hope that she answered your question. And that was a great question, Iman. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it was.
I believe I'm going to switch up a little bit and ask a question that men tend not to get, but females always get, especially females that are mothers. And I'm aware that you are a mother. I would like to know, what are your thoughts on, or what would your response be to anyone that asks you about how your journey in politics has affected your role as a mother?
I think you should ask Alex that question.
That's one question a lot of political women that have children tend to get. And
it's hard.
I mean, everyone tends to have a different response.
Because even when present, you're thinking about something else, you know, and sometimes the phone is ringing off the hook, or sometimes you might sit down at dinner and then some major emergency happens and you spend your time trying to solve that at dinner. So I found that one of the hardest things was to just be present. And you have to take an active approach to be present and to say, look, I can't deal with this right now. I have to do university applications and help Alex send them off, or I have to do this. And I only had one. But imagine, you know, I have a supportive partner, but imagine somebody who doesn't have the ability to have anybody else to go to the supermarket, or to drop the kids to school, or to do these things. And it's work. It's a lot of time. Politics takes up a lot of time, because you also have the party meetings. You have NEC, in the case of the PMB, you have RMC. Your days are long. You have parliament on a Tuesday, you have committee meetings on a Wednesday. If you're an officer of the party, you have meetings on a Monday evening that go until 10 o'clock at night. Sometimes you have meetings on a Sunday. I couldn't tell the last time in years that I took a vacation, or I knew what a Saturday felt like, until COVID, because I was at funerals all day on a Saturday, and then I had to do something else on a Sunday for the party. And so I haven't had, until COVID came, where the lockdowns happened, I didn't know what it was like to spend a weekend at home. And those are big sacrifices that you make.
It sounds like big sacrifices, honestly.
So it's not glamorous, trust me. There are days when I have 3 funerals, and the funerals, them long.
Well, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So do you have something to say?
Yes, I was just doing a time check. It's 8:45 here in Barbados, so we have to think about closing off soon. So if there are not any more questions, I want to kind of get us into the groove of wrapping up. So I thought that response that Lisa just gave regarding parenting, I found to be very insightful, because it also indicates the extent to which the institutional support is not there to accommodate women who are in the political arena, and the assumption it makes that we will just manage, you know. So I think one of the things we probably have to think about is, what strategies can we make, can we do, can we implement, particularly in terms of at the level of legislation, or even at the level of party, to make sure that the care work is shared equally between parents, so that the assumption is that regardless of the woman's job or career, that she's still primarily responsible for parenting. And I think when we when we do that, then we will be able to see more participation of women, because you have more men who are also willing to share care work. And as long as that is in balance, we're going to have less women involved. So I'm glad you really brought that out to the fore. One last question. I see Naya. Naya is coming in. Since I have the mic, let me just continue. Naya asks, Naya is one of our pink parliamentarians in this cohort. She said, Naya, would you like to just ask it yourself?
Yeah.
Sure. I was just basically asking, how would you say like one social class affects their social mobility as it comes towards career? In this case, it would be politics, because the truth is that the impact of slavery lives on, and I don't think it would ever go away. But some people can not hide it, but not make it as obvious. And some people can make it obvious, and whether it be stating it or how they react to certain things you say based on your either social class or your background. So how would you say that affects, or does it affect their ability to do so?
No, I don't think, well, social mobility is not what affects you in politics per se. It really is whether or not you have the talent, because once you have the talent and you have the appeal, my very good friend Natalie Nito will tell you that she had a division which was a Labour Party division, and she didn't have any money. She just, she had a job, but she didn't have any money. But she won the division, and she turned it she was a councillor first. And she wasn't seen as anybody who could do that. It's the same thing that Portia tells you. When Portia Simpson Miller said she started out, she was just not anybody that came from political gentry or came from anywhere, but the people loved her. And so it's not about where you come from or how much money you have, it's whether the people love you. So don't go in there feeling insecure about if you come from somewhere or don't come from somewhere. Go in there with a heart for people. And if you do that, and I would wrap up by saying that, if you have a heart for people and you love people, the people will love you and they will feel it. And on that note, I would say that's my final answer.
Okay, I'm going to invite Latoya Charles, another pink parliamentarian, to move the vote of thanks.
Okay, good evening. MP Hannah, we see it as a great pleasure to have had you grace us, not only with your presence, but of course with your wisdom. And I wish everyone could at least get a chance to identify what stuck with them the most, but I'm sure we are particularly grateful for how you brought out the realities involved in pursuing a political career, especially that of women, and how you reaffirmed to us the need for a strong grassroots base. So we want to really thank you for that and everything else that you openly shared with us. And of course, answering the very difficult questions, but rather important. So thank you so much. And we wish to have you many more times in the future. I also want to say a special thanks to the people and organizations who really made this event possible. Women and Development Unit at UE Open Campus, a very treasured partnership with Pink Parliament, of course. A major thanks to the UE Open Campus Marketing and IT department for ensuring that we had a successful event. And of course, thank you all for attending and bringing life to this conversation. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, MP Hannah. And we look forward to having many more discussions like this in the future.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Okay, thank you so much, Lisa. I'm asking persons not to exit yet. Krystal Yearwood, our marketing communications person, is going to take a couple of screenshots. So this is a moment where persons, we're going to finally turn on your cameras and look decent and smile. So if you don't wish to, you don't have to. We're not forcing you, but it's preferably for the two or three photographs that you at least turn on your cameras.
Well, I think the screen was recording it, so they could probably screenshot the recordings.
Yes, I'm not sure. This is for Pink Parliament.
Oh, so smile.
Smile.
Krystal, let us know where you're taking it so we can look good, you know.
my hair back. Sorry.
Okay, after 3, 1, 2, 3. Good.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you so much, Lisa. Take care, everyone.
All the best to you. Look forward to seeing you in the Barbados Parliament very soon.
Thank you for coming.